Is lobbying a moral or even constitutional act? It's a question that has been debated for decades. Lobbying dates back to the 1640s and came over from England to America. Lobbyists have existed unofficially in our country practically from the birth of the new American government. Even in 1792, when no laws for lobbying had yet been formed, the Virginia veterans of the Continental Army hired William Hull specifically to lobby the newly formed Congress for additional compensation.
But what exactly is lobbying? Most people hear this term and dismiss it, others assume it is only a form of legal bribery, and others have never even heard of it. Lobbying is the attempt by individuals or private interest groups to influence the decisions of government. Lobbying is an important part of our government and is one of many ways we can petition the government for a redress of our grievances. But due to the many ways to lobby, most people get a confused and bad impression of it, as if it is some strange separate world. That is why one must look at the countless different ways to lobby in order to get a good grasp on what lobbying is. Among these ways to get public officials' attentions, the first way is to buttonhole them or trap them in legislators' offices, hotels, or private homes. Letters may be written or phone calls made to public officials, and campaigns may be organized for that purpose. Organizations may provide favored candidates with money and services. Massive public relation campaigns employing all techniques of modern communication may be launched to influence public opinion. Extensive research into complex legislative proposals may be supplied to legislative committees by advocates of various and often conflicting interests. Substantial election campaign contributions or other assistance may be supplied to favor legislators or executives. At the same time, I believe that lobbying is an important and beneficial part of our government. I also believe that lobbying has become a big issue in the political system. The issue here does not come from private lobbying, but from the professional level lobbying that takes ways of lobbying to extreme amounts by offering huge fundraisers and giving away big campaign donations to win political favors. These flaws allow different businesses to use their money to persuade politicians to vote and fight for the selfish interests of companies opposed to the well-being of society as a whole. This causes a power imbalance between individuals who don't have a lot of money and big businesses who can easily spend money to push for whichever policy benefits them. I propose that money in lobbying has corrupted our political system, distorted its policies in the favor of the rich, and must be reformed. This matter becomes increasingly urgent each day as the rich start to control more and more aspects of our government through lobbying, and in doing so, stealing the poor's already endangered political power. In order to prove this claim, this paper will examine different perspectives and stories on the corruption in our lobbying system, why allowing corporations too much political power is harmful, and the flaws in our lobbying system along with how to fix them, and finally, how someone can fight back against corrupt lobbyists and get involved in their political systems. It has become common today to dismiss lobbying and underestimate its influence. But since the turn of the millennium, the amount spent on lobbying in the United States has more than doubled, and its influence is no longer dismissible. But how is this money being used? In order to understand how this money is being used, let's take a look at a famous professional lobbyist, Jack Abramoff. Jack Abramoff is considered the most corrupt lobbyist in our nation's history. Jack Abramoff and his partners were masters of spreading favors around Washington. They parceled out tickets to major sporting events, escorted influential officials on all expenses paid golf junkets, paid the tabs for lavish dinners, and cozied up to politicians at Signatures, a restaurant Mr. Abramoff once owned on Pennsylvania Avenue. All the while, they were soliciting and obtaining help on issues ranging from gambling to wages to tax policy. Eventually, Jack Abramoff pleaded guilty to conspiracy, fraud, and tax offenses. His story is a prime example of how money and favors involved in politics cause officials to turn away from doing what's right for the common good and start doing what benefits their friends and themselves. But there are many examples of individuals fighting for what is right by lobbying. A good example of this is a political group called West Slope Youth Voice, made up of young students, which goes every year to lobby for youth-related bills and has helped many bills pass, which still benefit Colorado to this day. Lobbying itself is not the issue within our political system. It is the money that lobbying sneaks into it that causes its corruptions and issues. And by disguising bribes as donations and fundraisers, lobbyists funded by companies are able to have unjust influence over our government and turn our legislative system into a money-hungry jungle where it is not the most righteous thing that prevails, but the most profitable. By doing so, the people's equality has been distorted and lobbying has become immoral and corrupt. At the end of the day, these are still people, not animals, even if they are corrupt. Robert McDonald's story conveys a more human reason for corrupt actions. Robert F. McDonald was elected governor of Virginia on November 3, 2009. At this time, he and his family had hit huge financial difficulties, and nearly a year later, he and his wife had a combined credit card balance of $90,000. And in 2012, the business operated by him and his sister had a loan balance of $2.5 million. At the time of his election, Robert McDonald met with a man named Johnny Williams, the founder and CEO of Star Scientific, Inc., who was trying to get the FDA to classify a product named Antablock as a pharmaceutical, but lacked the funds for the expensive testing, clinical trials, and studies. After a few meetings, McDonald agreed that the independent testing of Antablock in Virginia was a good idea. Johnny Williams soon started providing expensive gifts to the McDonald's and was willing to help with their financial situation. McDonald began to facilitate meetings to help get studies started, hosted a launch event for Antablock, and spoke to various government officials about the benefits of Antablock. The McDonald's were eventually arrested and charged for corruption under federal statutes that make it a felony to take official action in exchange for money, campaign contributions, or anything of value. The Supreme Court overturned the convictions against McDonald, ruling that federal prosecutors relied on a boundless definition of the kinds of acts that could lead politicians to face criminal charges. The story of McDonald shows how politicians could be corrupted, but one must make sure not to take the story's message as give your politicians some slack, but see it as a cautionary tale of what happens when you allow politics to mix with business and money. The ultimately unsatisfying Supreme Court's decision to overturn his convictions reflected the Supreme Court's regrettable innocence about how things work in the real world, and why it must be up to the citizens of the United States to correct the government. But if the businesses lobbying in our politics are run by the people, then how is it immoral? Isn't that the very example of a people-ran democracy? What is overlooked in this argument is the simple fact that these companies don't care about the common people. They don't care if a few people get hurt as long as their profits rise. The issue with corporations in our government is that they are representing themselves, not the people. In doing so, the government makes fewer choices for the larger good and more for the self-interest of the corporations. But if the corporations profit, doesn't that mean we all do? Though I can see that the economy profits from corporations and businesses prospering, I still insist we should not give corporations full power. If we do so, we allow them to take advantage of consumers and cause a government and culture that focuses more on profit than the larger good. So what should we change? The first fix that can easily help begin to fix our broken system is to establish more rules and regulations on lobbying itself and organize its system. The people should not have to chase down their representatives just to get 2 rush minutes to speak to them, while those that have the money have already bought their votes and favors. I propose that there should be more designated times and opportunities for citizens to speak to their representatives, and students should be educated on how to get involved in their politics and political system, and fight back against a corrupt political system. As Kofi Annan puts it, knowledge is power, information is liberating, education is a premise of progress in every society and in every family. The first step in almost every revolution or big change is to educate the people, and that is exactly what must be done in order to fix the corrupt forms of lobbying in our political system. Another step is to then set up times for legislators to meet with their citizens in a similar way to town meetings. This allows proper time for citizens to voice their concerns and make sure that every side can be equally heard. The final step in this reform would be to add a new level of transparency to the political system as a whole and push the influence of money out of Washington. The most crucial part of this reform is not to only get more people involved within their political system, but to also get money out of politics and bring back a balance in political power between individuals and companies. One of the many ways to do so would be to put more regulations on professional lobbyists and the businesses who fund them, and by coming up with a more organized system of lobbying, we can ensure that votes won't be bought and stolen from the citizens who truly need it. With these reforms, we as citizens can take back our power and take back our right to lobby. The act of lobbying itself is constitutional and extremely beneficial, but by involving money, it has become corrupt and immoral. Ultimately, what's at stake here is more than just our political system, it's our culture and our world. As preventions to climate change and environmental issues are lobbied against by corporations, and with our world fastly evolving, and with more and more corporations using money to try to take advantage of the government and its citizens, it is more than important than ever before to fight back and stop the corruption in our lobbying system. By doing so, we can stop the corruption taking place in our government, and in turn take back the power in our political system to make the change that will actually benefit people and not the corporations. Only you can stop the corruption in our government. Fuck this.